The rain was relentless, hammering the cracked pavement of the abandoned industrial park as Ethan trudged through the dark, his flashlight cutting a weak beam through the storm. A retired detective turned private investigator, Ethan had seen his share of grim cases, but the anonymous tip he'd received that morning, a cryptic message about lost girls in the old textile factory, gnawed him in a way nothing had before. His boots splashed through puddles, each step heavier than the last, as if his gut knew what he'd find would break him. He wasn't wrong. Inside the factory, the air was thick with mildew and despair. The beam of his flashlight danced across rusted machinery and shattered windows until it landed on something that stopped his heart. 3 teenage girls, huddled together on the cold concrete floor, their heads shaved, their faces streaked with dirt and tears. Scrawled across their foreheads in jagged, charcoal letters were the words "Unwanted Burden." Ethan's breath caught, his knees buckling as he dropped the flashlight. The girls flinched at the clatter, their eyes wide with terror, but they didn't run. They were too broken to move. "Who did this to you?" Ethan's voice was barely a whisper, raw with a fury he hadn't felt in years. The girls didn't answer, their gazes darting to the shadows as if expecting their tormentor to emerge. Ethan knelt, forcing his hands to stay steady as he reached for the oldest, a girl with hollow cheeks and eyes that seemed to carry the weight of a lifetime. "You're safe now," he said, though the words felt like a lie. He didn't know if safety was possible for them anymore. The girls, Lila, Mia, and Sarah, were 16, 15, and 14, respectively, though their shaved heads and frail frames made them look younger, almost childlike. Ethan learned their names only after coaxing them into his truck with promises of warmth and food. They were runaways, each with a story that twisted Ethan's heart. Lila had fled an abusive stepfather who'd called her a burden since she was 10. Mia's parents had kicked her out after she came out as gay, telling her she was too much trouble. Sarah, the youngest, had been shuffled through foster homes, each one labeling her unmanageable until she believed it herself. They'd met on the streets, drawn together by their shared pain, only to be lured to the factory by a man they called Pastor John, who promised them salvation but delivered only cruelty. Ethan took them to his small apartment, the only place he trusted to keep them safe while he pieced together what had happened. The girls were skittish, jumping at every sound, but over cups of hot chocolate, they began to open up. Pastor John, they said, ran a so-called rehabilitation program for troubled teens, targeting runaways no one would miss. He preached that they were burdens on society, unworthy of love, and shaved their heads to cleanse them of their pasts. The charcoal writing was his final mark, a brand to remind them of their worthlessness. Ethan's fists clenched until his knuckles turned white. He'd seen evil before, but this was something darker, a predator who fed on the vulnerable, twisting their pain into a weapon. The challenge was immediate. Ethan had to find Pastor John before he targeted more girls, but the man was a ghost. No records, no real name, just whispers among the city's homeless youth about a charismatic figure who offered hope and delivered despair. Ethan's old police contacts were reluctant to help. The case was too messy, too low priority for kids society had already written off. But Ethan couldn't let it go. The girls' haunted eyes followed him, even in his sleep, and he knew he was their only chance. Days turned into weeks as Ethan tracked leads through the city's underbelly. He scoured shelters, interrogated street vendors, and followed tips that led to dead ends. Lila, Mia, and Sarah stayed with him, slowly regaining their strength. Lila, the fiercest of the trio, began helping Ethan with research, her sharp mind cutting through the chaos of his notes. Mia, quiet but observant, sketched portraits of Pastor John from memory, capturing details that sparked a breakthrough, a tattoo of a cross on his wrist, a detail Ethan recognized from a case years ago. Sarah, still fragile, clung to Ethan like a lifeline, her small acts of trust helping with dishes, offering a shy smile, fueling his resolve. The emotional toll was heavy. Ethan wrestled with his own demons, memories of his daughter, lost to a car accident a decade ago, who'd been Sarah's age. Every time he looked at the girls, he saw her face, her potential snuffed out too soon. He wondered if he was fighting for them or for the redemption he'd never found. The girls, too, struggled. Lila's anger flared at the slightest trigger, Mia withdrew into silence when memories overwhelmed her, and Sarah's nightmares left her screaming in the night. Yet, they began to heal in small ways, finding solace in each other and in Ethan's unwavering presence. The breakthrough came when Ethan's old partner, Maria, a detective who'd never lost faith in him, uncovered a lead. The tattoo matched a description of a man named John Carver, a disgraced youth counselor who'd vanished after allegations of abuse. Maria's search turned up a derelict church on the city's outskirts, a place Carver had used as a base years ago. Ethan knew it was a risk. Carver could be long gone, or worse, waiting, but he couldn't wait any longer. Armed with nothing but his flashlight and a revolver, he left the girls with Maria and headed to the church. The confrontation was brutal. Carver was there, surrounded by photos of other girls, their faces marked with the same cruel words. He was unrepentant, spewing his twisted gospel about cleansing society's burdens. Ethan's rage boiled over, but he held back, knowing the girls needed justice, not vengeance. When Carver lunged with a knife, Ethan disarmed him, pinning him to the ground until Maria arrived with backup. The arrest was swift, but the victory felt hollow. How many others had Carver hurt? How many were still out there, unclaimed? Back at the apartment, Ethan faced the girls, expecting relief but finding uncertainty. They were free from Carver, but their scars, physical and emotional, remained. Lila asked, "What happens to us now?" Ethan didn't have an easy answer. He wasn't a savior, he was just a man trying to do right. But he promised them one thing: they were not burdens. They were survivors, and he'd fight for them as long as it took. Over the next months, Ethan worked with social workers to find safe homes for the girls. Lila enrolled in community college, her fierce determination driving her toward a future in law. Mia found a supportive foster family and began painting, her art a quiet rebellion against her past. Sarah, still healing, stayed with Ethan longer, her laughter slowly returning as they built a bond neither had expected. Ethan never called himself their father, but in his heart, he knew he'd found a purpose he thought he'd lost forever. As the camera pans across Ethan's apartment, now filled with photos of the girls' new lives, Lila at her first debate, Mia at an art show, Sarah blowing out birthday candles, you, the viewer, are left with a message: no one is a burden, no matter what the world tells them. Ethan's story isn't just about saving 3 girls, it's about seeing the unseen, loving the unloved, and fighting for those who can't fight for themselves. You have that power, too. Look around, who needs you to see them? Who needs you to fight? The answer might change everything. The screen fades to black, leaving you with a challenge: be someone's Ethan. Because in a world that brands people as burdens, choosing to see their worth is the greatest rebellion of all.